Where I come from in the good old US of A, the cheapest plug-in hybrid sedan you can buy is the Toyota Prius Prime, which costs $34,000. Things here in the Chinese market are a little bit different. We've got stuff like this, the Wuling Xing Guang, a plug-in hybrid sedan the same size as a Toyota Camry that costs just $11,000 to $14,000.
Welcome to Wheels Boy, where we cover the newest, coolest, and wildest vehicles from the Chinese car market. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell.
The Xing Guang doesn't really break any new ground when it comes to exterior styling on Chinese electric vehicles, adopting the now common upper LED strip and lower headlight unit design we've seen on many other cars. I will say, however, that the lower headlight area here is a little larger than I would have expected, giving it a slightly more sporty appearance. Undoubtedly, the best angle from which to view the Xing Guang is the rear three-quarter, where you can appreciate the sloping roofline and wrap-around taillight. Camry-esque length means Camry-esque rear cargo space as well. Specifically, 540 liters or a little less than the Camry. The Xing Guang comes in two trim levels. The base version, which is $11,000, has a 9.5 kilowatt-hour lithium iron phosphate battery with an official WLTC range of 50 kilometers. This, the top spec car, is $14,000. It's got a 20.5 kilowatt-hour, again, lithium iron phosphate battery with an official WLTC range of 105 kilometers. The base car only comes with slow charging. It takes 3.5 hours to reach a full charge. This, the top spec car with a larger battery, however, has fast charge and can go from 30 to 80% in half an hour. Power levels are the same regardless of which battery you choose. Most of that power comes from a single front-mounted electric motor making 130 kilowatts or about 175 horsepower. The rest of the power comes from this, a 1.5-liter naturally aspirated four-cylinder backed by a single-speed dedicated hybrid transmission. The differences between the two trim levels extends to the interior as well. Some edifying examples of this include the center screen. On the base car, it is 10.1 inches and includes a backup camera, whereas on this top spec car, it's 15.6 inches and includes a 360-degree camera. The instrument cluster screen. The base car is 7 inches, this top spec car 8.8 inches. The base car also only has 4 speakers, whereas this one has 6. Seats on both trim levels are clad in this faux leather material. It's manually adjusted over here on the passenger side and electrically adjusted for the driver. There are no other features, things like heating or ventilating or massaging. It might seem a little ridiculous for me to mention those features on a review for a car that only costs $11,000 to $14,000, but keep in mind this is the Chinese car market, where competition is so fierce that these seeming luxury features have penetrated deep into affordable categories like this. There's plenty of storage to be found, including underneath the center console here. The center console cubby, also pretty capacious, and there's storage on the door pockets as well. I would describe it as very practical. That's the same word that I would use to describe the material quality and material level inside of this car. Soft touch materials are limited to the dashboard, the door cards, and the top of the center console here. Everywhere else is hard plastic. This wood grain trim, by the way, gasp, it's not real wood grain, and the feel of it is not too far off this piano black plastic here. What you're really paying for when you buy this car, in addition to that PHEV powertrain, is space, especially here in the second row. As you can see, with the front seat adjusted for someone of my height, I'm 5'9" or 1.75 meters tall, I've got plenty of leg room, more than enough for me, and headroom-wise, well, not quite so good, probably about 2 fingers worth above my head. Where this thing is a bit lacking compared to something like the Toyota Camry is in terms of the floor height. Like many vehicles that have these, PHEV or pure electric powertrains, the floor is a little bit higher than I would like, but since you're able to stick your feet a bit under the front seats, it's still a pretty comfortable position in which to sit. In terms of features, all you've really got are 2 USB charging ports, just like in the front row. Do you want to buy a Chinese car like this and export it to your country? Reach out to us via email at sales@wheelsboy.cn. We can connect you with a reliable exporter of Chinese vehicles. In a tale as old as time, This cheap car drives like a cheap car. Yeah, that's right. 14,000 or 11 to 14,000 US dollars doesn't get you something that drives as well as a $30,000 Toyota Camry.
Wuling doesn't provide an official 0 to 100 km/h time, but my seat of the pants estimate puts it around 8 seconds. Fast enough for an efficient commuter.
Take the steering, for example, which is relaxed, I suppose you could call it, and very rubbery once you get it off center. The suspension tuning, its McPherson strut front and multi-link rear, isn't particularly impressive. When you go over any kind of change in elevation, i.e. a speed bump or undulations in the road, you very easily get a lot of rocking back and forth. No surprise then when I tell you that body roll is also pretty excessive. Any kind of aggressive driving, aggressively throwing it into a corner results in it just kind of rolling over on its tires and these very cheap tires squealing as if their life depended on it. That, however, is not what I think makes this car feel particularly cheap. No. What makes this car feel like a $14,000 car is NVH, or rather a lack of NVH control. For example, when you're driving around town and you go over some bumps, not only do you feel those bumps, you also hear them as they echo up through the suspension and into the cabin. There's even some squeaking that comes from the pillars as well. On the highway, NVH from wind is so loud that it's a little bit difficult to have a conversation with the person next to you using a normal tone of voice. NVH from that 4-cylinder engine up front, by the way, yeah, it's probably as bad as I've ever experienced in any PHEV, and maybe even worse. In most PHEVs, when the small engine kicks on, you can feel it, and you can feel it when it turns off as well, but it's not particularly intrusive. I cannot say the same for the Xing Guang. Having said that, engine NVH is an issue with pretty much any cheap car with an ICE powertrain. What a vehicle with a pure ICE powertrain cannot do, however, is drive on pure electric only, which this car can simply by hitting this button here on the center console.
Even with a depleted battery, the Xing Guang is more fuel efficient than a hybrid Camry, with an official WLTC rating of 4.09 liters per 100 kilometers, or 57.5 miles per gallon.
Obviously, putting it into pure EV mode doesn't solve any of the other issues with NVH, like wind noise, but not having the engine sound kind of droning in the background does make it a little bit more of a relaxing experience. And with 105 kilometers, or around 65 miles of range on that WLTC cycle, I would say most drivers could go 2 or maybe even 3 days without having to charge. If you had access to a slow charger, say at work or at home, you could go a very long time without having to put fuel in this thing. And then when eventually you wanted to take a long trip, no problem, just make sure there's gas in the tank. So while there are plenty of issues with the Xing Guang's driving experience in terms of comfort and NVH and everything, it's still well worth the money. Do you know what the wildest thing is? This is not the only PHEV sedan here in the Chinese market that's this big and this cheap. There are others, and there will be more to come.